Trump and Secretary Kennedy has come in and said, look, infectious diseases, we're getting away from all this stuff. The biodefensive was going on at NIAID, for instance. And we're going to focus more on what's actually really harming people, which is chronic disease. If you go to the CDC website and you look up the top 10 killers of what's killing Americans, none of those top 10s is infectious diseases, okay? And yet, all we're hearing all the time in the media is infectious disease, infectious disease. Last year, it was wall-to-wall measles. Every time you turn around, there was another story about measles. I think 2 or 3 Americans died last year of measles. We've got 12,000 people die every week from cancer. And yet, if you were a Martian and you had never been to Earth and all you did was read the Post, Stat News, the New York Times, you would think that measles was killing everyone. And then along comes hantavirus. And then it's wall-to-wall hantavirus. And I look it up, and in the last decade, around 100 Americans have died of hantavirus. So why am I reading about hantavirus all the time? Now it's, what's in the news now? Ebola, Ebola, Ebola. In all of recorded medical history, when the first Ebola case came up, which I believe was 50 years ago, we've had 15,000 people have died of Ebola. Now, it's a big deal in certain parts of Africa, but I don't know why I keep reading it every single day almost that I open up the New York Times. What is going on? I have my ideas, but I want to ask you, why are we being inundated with this constant fear of viruses? What do you think is behind it?
Well, it's multifactorial, I think is the first answer is we have a history. Media has this phrase that they use a lot. If it bleeds, it leads, which is to the extent that for media, for newspapers, for some of those people, sensational stories are what is their stock in trade. And so hemorrhagic fevers and some of this, there are certainly catastrophic situations that can be, and then the PPEs with the suits, the space suits people, it makes good media pictures. You are absolutely right. If you actually try to be, again, academic, let's look at deaths by decade. So 0 to 10, 10 to 20, up through 80, and segregate what are the causes of death in each of those decades of life for Americans. It's only the first decade where infectious diseases get into the top 10. And then there's some interesting ways to mitigate it other than what's maybe being done. So I am not sure why we are at where we're at. NIAID came out and grew because of 2 events. One was the HIV crisis, which led to huge funding around HIV inside of NIAID from about 85 to about 2000. And then the towers and the anthrax and all of that came about, where there was the biodefense, bioweapons, all of that concepts in science was moved to NIAID or was put inside NIAID, as you say, around 2001 or 2002, and it grew there. So we're now at a place where the second largest institute in NIH, number 1 is National Cancer Institute, number 2 is NIAID in terms of dollars within a single institute, has a lot of money focused on biodefense aspects and HIV research.
Right. I want to give you my 2 ideas of what I think why we're seeing virus fear all the time. I think there's a subtext that's always kind of in the background, and sometimes it'll follow within the story. Sometimes it might follow in the second story. One is we pulled out of the WHO. This is all this pushing these viruses about pushing the WHO, pushing us back into membership for WHO. And the other one that you see sometimes, sometimes even in the same story. It's there right now with Ebola, vaccines. What do you think about that? The forces pushing this constantly are people who want America to get back in the WHO and pharma, which is one of the biggest funders of the media.
It's a 1-year process to drop out of the WHO. So when it was first announced that President Trump wanted the United States to leave the WHO, I did an analysis of, again, the cost benefit and what we were getting from it and alternatives. And I concluded that bilateral agreements between the United States and countries on a specific level would be much more efficient and impactful for worldwide health than being inside the WHO. And that some of their policies where they were trying to put in transnational healthcare control were sort of against the sovereignty of nations and things. So I was supportive of pulling out of the WHO. And I think you might be right, or probably are right. If you looked at some of the announcements around the hantavirus or the Ebola virus, you'll see the director of WHO saying, "I'm on the scene where the passengers are coming off the boat." Is the first sentence of why the camera is rolling there. And then in the next sentence, he says, "We need more funding for WHO, and we need to be united around these things to help make it better." So these things are used a bit as a pretext for conversations around policy, which I think everybody does, but it doesn't make it right. And then the other thing is, I think you are right. We ended up having again a political discussion around vaccines rather than a scientific, medical, healthcare, public health discussion around vaccines. And it's just remarkable to have people have sort of a litmus test. Are you anti-vax? And I feel like saying, "You do you understand how crazy that question is?" Because
You
it's like
know,
saying, "Are you anti-chemotherapy?"
are
I
you
say,
are
"Well,
you are you anti-medical device? What does that mean?
to be very specific, we need to talk about individual vaccines, the
Right.
incidence of the disease, the trade-off of the side effects. These are really important, nuanced public health conversations that get truncated because everyone just says, which side of the fence are you on, anti-vax or not anti-vax? And nobody's that's just an inappropriate pretext for a conversation.